A glass cannon is a video game terminology referring to a character with strong offensive power but weak defensive capabilities, and you can point to numerous examples of this mindset in multiple characters, such as The Lost and Tainted Lost, Judas, Eve, and the topic of today's analysis, Tainted Jacob. You can die very easily with all characters listed, but they have potential for high damage and a very successful run. However, all characters are much more vulnerable to flaws in the room designs and situations that are out of the player's control.
I mean, I know we have Midas Touch, but it's gonna hurt. There's not really too many ways around that.
What we will discuss in the first part of this character analysis series is the reason Tainted Jacob was horribly flawed at the launch of the final DLC, how the big patch fixed him, and why he is the best glass cannon character. The idea for Tainted Jacob and Dark Esau may come from the biblical story. After Jacob tricked his father Isaac to give him his blessings, Esau was angry and vowed to kill Jacob for stealing his birthright and Isaac's blessing. Jacob fled the family and was in hiding for 20 years. This is further supported if you buy Birthright in the shop. The description for Tainted Jacob's birthright is, "It's not yours," and benefits Dark Esau instead of Jacob. When Repentance came out and people played with Tainted Jacob for the first time, they were not happy.
Let's test this killing Esau theory. I liked it a lot. I think that was a lot of fun. I think that we should do that. We should do that more often. It's a good time for me.
In fact, in the case of Huts, he released a hilarious compilation of all of his Tainted Jacob deaths. I'm not going to play parts of it in this video. In fact, you should check it out for yourself. People had multiple problems with released Jacob, mostly citing two things: room designs clearly not intended for him, and I think this is the more important reason, Dark Esau being killable, essentially turning you into the Lost, with no holy mentor. Quickly brushing up the room designs, in most cases they are bullshit even for other characters, but let's examine as to why Dark Esau being killable and turning you into the Lost after his death is a bigger pile of bullshit exclusive to him. At the time of release, Dark Esau could damage himself on red poop, fires and spiked rocks, or be killed by other enemies, and in later stages, when the red poop appeared constantly and enemies were more dangerous, Dark Esau would get himself killed, turning you into the Lost and no fault of your own. Do you remember what I said at the start of the video? Most of the time, the situations out of the player's control are usually mild annoyances, and although unfair, they mostly don't kill you or make you extremely vulnerable outright. Mostly.
That's right, I gotta change to my second. Why does that exist? Why is that a thing? Like, seriously, I thought they got rid of this shit. Like, how am I supposed to dodge that?
But Dark Esau killing himself and turning you into the Lost with no holy mantle is extremely punishing, especially when it's not your fault. It was extremely unfair and annoying. Players resorted to removing Tainted Jacob's main gameplay mechanic just not to be caught surprised when Dark Esau inevitably kills himself. They were removing the mechanic that made Tainted Jacob unique and started treating him as the Lost that you bought at the Walmart. The Binding of Isaac development team clearly understood the criticism that people were raising about Walmart Tainted Jacob, and tackled to massively tweak the character, targeting Dark Esau. In the big patch, specifically version 1.7.5, they made Dark Esau invulnerable, alongside other changes that don't matter too much, and the fact that Dark Esau can't be killed is a huge fix. The first reason why this fix was so important is that you turning into the Lost will no longer be caused by something that's not your fault. The only way that Dark Esau can turn you into a ghost is if he touches you, and although, yes, bullshit rooms designs might still fuck you over, in a vast majority of cases, you turning into the last will be your own fault. Which leads us to the second reason Dark Esau finally fulfills his main purpose of forcing players to play Tainted Jacob how he was intended to be played, unless you manage to merge with him for some reason. So, how is Tainted Jacob then? Why am I still talking about him? For me personally, there are a number of points that make Tainted Jacob unique in the sphere of Glass Cannon characters. Those are Constant Tension, Dark Esau, and Forgiveness. We all understand the basics. If Dark Esau hits you, he turns you into the last Winghold Holy Mentor. Now that he can't be killed, he lingers for the whole run. Every single run turns into a witch hunt where you have to control Jacob to dodge enemy attacks while also trying to dodge Dark Esau. And you know what? The tension feels great, mainly because you don't get to experience this type of tension with any other character, even with any Glass Cannon character. The tension feels refreshing and unique. Second point is Dark Esau himself. Why? He can be used offensively to deal massive damage, either nearly one-shotting a boss or killing a large number of low health enemies. With the Anima Solar, which can also be used for short-term relief tension, Dark Esau can be exploited for great offensive opportunities. Third point is that, strangely, even though Tainted Jacob is a Glass Cannon character, with his 3 heart containers, enemy attacks feel a lot more forgiving. And even if you get hit by Dark Esau, which can happen, you don't immediately die, but turn into the last, which gives you the benefits of the last, thus allowing you to cheese most rooms.
Doing your mom, doing your mom. You know we straight doing your mom. Doing your mom, doing your mom. Doing your mom, doing your mom. Doing your mom.
How does Tainted Jacob compare to other Glass Cannon characters? First, you can argue that once you have a lot of game-winning items, the tension of dying either disappears completely or, in the case of the lasts, greatly falls to a point you can't lose if you're not a total fucking idiot. And you can also say that about Tainted Jacob. However, Dark Esau never leaves you and can still charge you anytime he can. So yes, even though the tension around the Dark Esau can be lowered, it never leaves. Thus, any argument involving tension is automatically won by Tainted Jacob. Let's start with Eve. She can be played very offensively by keeping yourself at 1 red heart, which removes her damage multiplier penalty and gives her 5.8 damage and 1.5 speed, which is a higher initial DPS than Tainted Jacob's 3.5 damage and 3.0 tiers. The speed Eve has at 1 heart container gives an advantage when going for boss rush and hush, and also makes it easier for her to dodge enemy attacks. However, the overall DPS that Eve achieves is a joke to the offensive potential achieved by Dark Esau. And unless you have Eve's birthright, you have to keep yourself at 1 red heart, possibly denying you angel rooms. And while devil deals are not necessarily bad, the entire pool is bloated, thus giving you less chances to find good devil deals. Although yes, you can most likely get devil deals with Tainted Jacob, you can get them for free, so it's still better. Plus, the 2 other points, Constant Tension and High Forgiveness, are not present with Eve. Judas has higher DPS during bosses, thanks to the Book of Belial. He also has a much higher initial DPS potential with his high damage multiplier, making damage upgrades better. And if you get Sacred Heart, since you don't need devil deals to keep yourself at 1 red heart or less, well, you won, congrats. With this, the tension of having 1 heart container instantly falls when you get 1 HP up, and those are pretty common in the boss pool, so yeah, fuck the tension I guess. And Judas's DPS still doesn't reach the offensive ability of Dark Esau. Normal Last starts with all of his benefits, i.e. flying, spectral teals and 3 devil deals. So is the last finally able to compete with Tainted Jacob? Maybe, but I would argue that Tainted Jacob still wins. Why? Because the average room is more forgiving for Tainted Jacob while still having Dark Esau. With Tainted Jacob, at the start of a run, you have 6 hits. With the last, you have 2. Even in bathrooms, which is a near one shot for Tainted Jacob, that's a lot less dangerous. Finally, Tainted Last, higher damage multiplier, guaranteed offensive items, and all benefits of normal Last. What ultimately dooms Tainted Last against Tainted Jacob? Tainted Last is extremely unforgiving, and relying on holy cards is relying on RNG, and relying on RNG is fucking bullshit! Yes, Tainted Jacob isn't a perfect character. There are still problems with horrible room designs and game mechanics that were not built for him. And it might not be a character that everyone enjoys, and that's okay. Most people just want to have fun, and I'm not going to take it from them. After all, a game is supposed to provide entertainment. And yes, Tainted Jacob can be frustrating, believe me. I went through a lot of frustration just trying to reach the few marks I have right now, but all of them felt like victories, which I can't say about most characters I did marks on, maybe except the last. But for those that feel entertainment in being challenged, putting up with a lot of dangers around, want to feel refreshed playing Isaac, and enjoy Dark Souls, then Tainted Jacob is the option.